What's crack-a-lackin', my Azur Lane people of culture? It's me again, Andre, number one. Coronavirus has trapped me indoors, so I guess I'll be posting more videos and playing even more anime games. This time around, I'll be reviewing the carrier section of the tier list. And since this is the second video of the series, I won't really need to be doing that long intro of how to read the tier list and so on this time. If you're new, just check out my previous video about battleships so that you can get the full details of what these tags mean and how to actually read this tier list to the best of your ability. So I won't be wasting any of your time, and let's go and start with the tier 0 category of carriers. So in the number 1 place we've got Enterprise. Enterprise is the poster girl of the game, and as you'd expect from the poster girl, she is really good. She's been there since the beginning of the game, and so far she has never been out of tier 0. It's because she's got her signature skill, Owarida! Nah, it's called Lucky E. It does double the damage on a pretty high chance of activating, and it completely decimates the enemies. It does double the damage, come on. It's a lot of damage. And also, on top of that, when her skill activates, she evades everything. Literally nothing can hit her. She cannot die. So, she's been useful since the beginning of the game, and she's still a great ship now. So, if you're new to the game, I'd really recommend you try to get Enterprise from the gacha, because she would make your life so much easier, and you will progress so much faster with her. Now, moving on, we've got Essex in second place. She loves Enterprise, she's super cute, and she gives massive Eagle Union buffs. If you put Enterprise and Essex together with any other American backliner, then they're gonna have so many buffs and do incredible amounts of damage. So she gives massive Eagle Union buffs, as I just stated earlier, sorry, I just hiccup. So she reduces damage to 1 sometimes, which basically means that your ships basically take no damage sometimes. She gives increased aviation, and she gives extra anti-air so that you can deal with planes and stuff. That's really good, but that's not all. She gives increased damage to battleships. She has an extra wave of airplanes that deal flooding damage, which does even more damage than burns. So that sounds really good. But the problem is, you can only get her in a past event, so if you didn't get her by now, then you'll have to wait until the rerun where they introduce Essex again, and they introduce the new ship, Shangri-la, which I'm excited for, but she is not in the game currently, and that is the only person on this carrier section that is not on the current English server in tier 0 and tier 1. So moving on, we've got Centaur. She does very similar things to Essex. She does the same increased damage to battleships, but this time her torpedoes go in a diagonal pattern, which means that she actually can cover more ground and hit almost the entire screen with all of her torpedo bombers. And on top of that, instead of dealing extra flooding damage, she decreases speed so that you can deal with all those fast moving ships again, which is very useful. And then the last thing that's amazing is her last yellow skill, which increases aviation and firepower, which means that your entire backline will deal more damage. It's a global buff for the backlines, so all of them will do more damage, and that is an amazing skill. The best thing is, you can get her anytime right now because they added her to the permanent build pool. So when you're building for carriers, you can either get Enterprise or Centaur, and they are both amazing ships that will definitely help you. So, my personal favorites coming up, and that's Formidable. Formidable, amazing design, woo, hot maid. You can't go wrong with maids. I love maids so much. So, her signature skill, stops time. Stopping time is very good because when your enemies literally don't move at all, that's kind of better than even like a slight speed debuff because they just don't move. You can literally walk up to them, torpedo them, and they die. Stopping time is very overpowered, and she can do exactly that. And she launches an extra airstrike of fairy albacores that inflict flooding, which is very good because it deals so much more damage. And on top of that, she decreases damage taken for the back line. Now the last one in tier 0 is very questionable. I personally disagree with it a little bit, but that's Saratoga Retrofit. I honestly don't think she's able to compete with all the others in tier 0, and I think she was just put here because they added a new section called supports. That was not there on the last tier list, but it is here on this new tier list. So I think she just kind of moved up as everybody else got shifted over to supports. But anyway, she does flooding. She shoots a barrage of artillery once in a while. Pretty solid backliner. She increases vanguard fleets damage after airstrikes. I just don't think that she's personally that good compared to the other 4 ships in tier 0. I think she deserves definitely a high spot on tier 1, but definitely not your bread and butter like all the other tier 0 ships like Enterprise, Essex, Centaur, Formi. Yeah, those people. Moving on, as I said earlier in tier 1, Shangri-la is not on the English server, so I'm not going to be covering her because I have no idea what she does. Tokino Sora is a very solid Hololive idol from the collaboration we had a little bit a while ago. And she's also a solid Hololive ship. So she increases accuracy, which doesn't really matter too much, but there's a small speed decrease of enemies too, which also doesn't really matter too much because the speed decrease is kind of small. And there's a very mediocre wave of bombers that deal burn damage, which is not as good as flooding, but overall she's pretty solid. She does a lot of stuff, but she just doesn't do stuff as well as everybody else in tier 0, making her tier 1. Now Ark Royal is kind of interesting here because she's not necessarily like a super good damage dealer. She's more utility focused for her slow ability. She can slow down enemy ships quite a lot, and she's very useful for all those maps where maybe either you don't have Centaur or Formidable not in your fleet, so then you need someone to slow down all those ships. So then you leave it to Ark Royal. She loves lollies. Everybody likes lollies. Don't call the police. And moving on to tier 2. Now we've got a couple of these pair ships where you would need to go and use both the pair ships because they have massive synergies with each other. The first pair would be Shoukaku and Zuikaku. They are the 2nd carrier division in World War II, and they buff each other, but the thing is their buffs kind of are also a debuff for a little bit part of them. So here, I'll tell you about it. So basically when they're together, Shoukaku actually takes more damage, which is really bad because why would you want a buff that ends up hurting you more? But Zuikaku, on the other hand, gets a massive damage buff, and her airstrikes only get good on her 2nd or 3rd because she gets ramped up damage every single time she does an airstrike. Overall, this pair is probably not that good. There's definitely a much better pair which I will be focusing on in the next 30 seconds. But this pair is kind of lackluster compared to their sisters. Now you got Hiryuu and Souryuu. Oh, sorry. I think that the 2nd carrier division belongs to them, not Zuikaku and Shoukaku. Yeah, Zuikaku and Shoukaku are the 5th carrier division. Now Zuikaku is... yeah, oh shoot. Hiryuu and Souryuu, sorry, are the 2nd carrier division, and they are probably the worst out of all 3 of these pair ships. They just don't do anything special, and the only notable thing about it is Hiryuu, because after her retrofit, Hiryuu is super good in PvP, but is only shining in PvP. Because she gets this skill where she becomes immortal after taking fatal damage, and can launch an extra airstrike, which can mean the winning side or the losing side. So that's the best part about Hiryuu. Souryuu is not really anything too good or noteworthy to mention about. But finally moving on to the last pair of tier 2, Akagi and Kaga. They are amazing. However, they're easily tier 1 on my list. The problem is, you need to get them from 3-4, and only 3-4. You will need to grind that stage for an eternity. They're called the Fox Mines for a reason. It's notorious. But they are definitely worth getting, and I highly recommend you do so once you get to that stage, because they have the fastest airstrikes in the game. Their skills, once maxed out, lower each first airstrike of each person by 25%. And they are used still often in PvP, and I'm personally using them still in World 13. So they are still very relevant and very useful. I would actually argue that they would be still tier 1 and definitely above these other 2 pair ships. Now anybody else worth mentioning in the carriers in tier 3 and tier 4? Not really as that I can think of. Most of them do the same exact stuff as the other people. Taiho has a lot of massive bombs that don't really work out for her that well, but she's pretty solid. Same thing with Bunker Hill. She's got a extra wave of airplanes, I think, and the rest of them are exactly the same. And basically, whoever you like the best is who you'd want to use. Now, if you really want to decide, most of the people in the same tier are actually roughly performing the same as the others, except for maybe a few exceptions like Saratoga in tier 0 and Ark Royal in tier 1. But whoever you like the best, that's your most important deciding factor in this game. It's a waifu collector game. Go after the person that you think is the hottest, okay? Now, as always, I think that's it for this video. Like and subscribe if you found this information helpful. It really means a lot to me. Leave a comment if you have any questions about any ships that I may have not covered or may have not covered in detail enough. I always reply. See you in the next guide where it's going to be about the supports category. And see you later. I'll be uploading by the end of tomorrow, I think. See ya.